At the height of my debt, I realized that I was paying about $1,000 a month on my debt payments. That is $12,000 a year. Like, that could be a down payment for a house, or that could be a 3-month sabbatical from work. So you can imagine the giddiness that I felt when I made that final debt payment and all that money was mine to keep and to do whatever I wanted with it. I was very intentional about what came next, which for me was financial freedom. I wanted to share some steps that I have taken to begin my financial freedom journey after debt freedom. So the first thing I did was define what financial freedom meant to me. When I'm talking about financial freedom, I think it's very important to have what I call an irresistible goal. And an irresistible goal is a core desire or life goal that you want more than anything. It is something that you think about at night, and it's something that you dream about for your future. This goal becomes the driving force to keep you motivated as you move from debt freedom to true financial freedom. Part of defining what financial freedom means to you is calculating your financial independence number. Now, this is the amount of money that you need to have saved or invested that can cover your living expenses without needing a paycheck. And the way that you calculate this is you decide what your annual living expenses are and you multiply that number by 25. So let's say, for example, you need $60,000 to live comfortably every year. Then you'll multiply that by 25 and that'll give you $1.5 million. So now that you know what your goal is, I suggest coming up with an irresistible goal statement. And the way that you structure this is using what I call the 3 W's. That is the what, the when, and the why. So here's an example of an irresistible goal statement. I want to be completely debt-free and have $750,000 in investments by 50 so that I can retire early and travel for 6 months a year without worrying about money. So the what was being debt-free and having $750,000 in investments. The when was by 50, and the why was so that they can retire early and travel without worrying about money. I created a 10-page PDF guide to help you define your own irresistible goal, and I also break down the exact plan that I'm using to reach financial freedom. I call it my irresistible goal framework. So type goal in the comments below if you want me to send you my irresistible goal framework. The next thing I did was prioritize funding my emergency fund and other savings goals. I also invested at the same time, but I'll get to that in a second. So experts recommend an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And I chose 3 months of living expenses because at the time I was single, I didn't have any children, and it was just me. So I felt comfortable with a 3-month emergency fund. So there are some factors that you need to consider to decide if you want to be closer to 3 months or 6 months. So first, are you single or married? Because if you have a single income family and maybe your job is a little questionable, then you might want to have more of an emergency fund. Another factor is, do you have children or not? Because if you have anyone depending on your income, you definitely need a bigger emergency fund. Another factor is, are you a homeowner or are you a renter? Because if you own your own home, all of those repairs are on you. You cannot just call the handyman and he comes and fixes it. So in house repairs can be, thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. So you absolutely want to have a larger emergency fund if you own your own home. Another consideration is, how far along in your career are you and how quickly could you find another job? Because if you're very early in your career where you could be let go at any time, then you might want to have a little bit more of an emergency fund. And also, if it'll take you 6+ months to find a new job if you got laid off, then you absolutely want to have a larger emergency fund. So once I had a fully funded emergency fund, I started focusing on other savings goals, such as like if I wanted to buy a new laptop or saving up for Christmas gifts, because there's certain expenses that are coming up. And so what I like to do is plan ahead and save a little bit every month. So when that expense comes up, I don't have to use a credit card or go into debt. I already have the money there. So I recommend keeping your emergency fund and your sinking funds in a high yield savings account. And these are savings accounts that pay you interest just by holding the money there. And they're usually with online banks rather than traditional brick and mortar banks. They really don't pay that much in interest. And my favorite high yield savings account is with Ally Bank. So after I got my emergency fund squared away, I started to develop my investing philosophy. And this happened quite by accident. And I'll get into my investment story in another video, but here's a lesson I learned the hard way. My very first investment was in Bitcoin at its peak in 2018, and that was a dumb decision. Because first of all, I didn't know nothing about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. All I knew was my cousin was talking about it and people were making millions of dollars seemingly overnight. And I believed the hype and all these crypto bros, and I gave in to FOMO, which is a horrible investing strategy. And fast forward a year later, I had lost almost 80% of my investment. And though these are paper losses because I never sold, thankfully, this taught me an invaluable lesson, which is investing carries genuine risk. Markets fluctuate, sometimes dramatically, and temporary losses are inevitable for every investor. And what separates successful investors from the rest is not luck or timing, it's emotional discipline. The stock market has historically reached new heights after every significant decline. So if you can be patient enough to weather the storm, you will be rewarded. So it is crucial to understand your own risk tolerance. So if the idea of seeing your portfolio drop by 30% will cause you to panic sell, then you need a more conservative portfolio, mainly with bonds. But the downside is, while bonds are less volatile, you won't receive as much return. So you could be missing out on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in returns with that type of portfolio. So in my opinion, your risk tolerance should align with your age and your investment goals. So if you're 25, you have a lot of time to weather the market volatility. So you can, have a more aggressive portfolio. But if you're 5 years from retirement, you need to have a more conservative portfolio. And also, if you want to make big returns in the stock market, you're going to have to take bigger risks. So once I knew what type of investor I was, I started to make an investment plan. So the first thing I had to do was decide where I wanted to invest my money. Now, when I was getting started, I didn't do this in this order that I'm going to describe, but I should have done it in this order, which was first start with tax advantage accounts like a 401k. So if you have a 401k through your employer, you usually also have an employer match, and that is free money. And this employer match can significantly boost your portfolio growth. Next, I would contribute to a Roth IRA. And the great thing about this account is you do put the money in after taxes, but then it grows tax-free in this account. And in retirement, when you withdraw this money, it is completely tax-free. So you don't have to give the government a dime. And also, if you have a high deductible health plan through your employer, you may have access to a HSA or a health savings account. This account is a secret weapon for most millionaires because it is a triple tax advantage account. So let me explain. When you contribute to this account, it's pre-tax money, and then it grows in the account tax-free. And then if you withdraw this money for any qualified medical expenses, you do not have to pay any taxes. This account is an amazing tool for both healthcare and retirement savings. So once you've maxed out all of these tax advantage accounts, then I would consider opening a taxable brokerage account. While taxable accounts don't offer any tax benefits, their major advantage is flexibility. Because you can contribute as much as you want to these accounts, whereas your tax advantage accounts like your 401k, your Roth IRA, and your HSA all have contribution limits. And also, you can access the money in taxable brokerage accounts whenever you want, versus the tax advantage accounts, you will receive a penalty of 10% if you try to access that money before 59 and a half. So that's why many people in the financial independence retire early community love taxable brokerage accounts, because they can access that money in their early retirement before 59 and a half. So once I decided where to invest my money, I needed to decide what I was going to invest in. So there are a myriad of options to choose from when it comes to choosing what to invest in. There's stocks, there's bonds, there's real estate investment trusts, there's index funds, ETFs, there's the technology sector, international, the healthcare sector. There's so many options. After my Bitcoin debacle, I decided to invest in low-cost, well-diversified index funds. And I believe that this is the best option, especially for beginner investors. So index funds gives you exposure to a broad range of stocks like Apple, Google, Nvidia, and other major companies without the risk of investing in individual stocks. I love index funds because they are simple to understand, inexpensive to own, and they save me time. And personally, 90% of my portfolio is in index funds. So the first 3 steps were things that I did years ago, but what am I doing today to stay on track? Well, the key is consistency. I stick to my plan because once you set up a solid foundation, the plan should not change. So I still follow a budget, I track all of my expenses, and I continue to live below my means. And when the journey gets tough or I start to lose focus, I revisit my irresistible goal statement to remind me of why I'm doing all of this. And that helps me stay motivated and consistent on this journey. And if you want help crafting your irresistible goal statement, or you simply just want a clear plan for how to reach financial freedom, don't forget to type goal in the comments below and I'll send you my irresistible goal framework. Having a plan is so important, but sometimes even with a solid plan, there are common pitfalls that most people unknowingly fall into after they become debt-free. And these pitfalls can derail your financial journey. So if you're ready to be done with debt for good, then watch this video next where I expose the 5 psychological traps that are keeping you in a cycle of debt. And I'll see you there.